So, when a marriage ends, one of the absolute toughest questions is, what are we going to do with the house? Right? It's so much more than just a building. It's a huge financial asset, and it holds all this shared history. So, how do you possibly find a fair value that both of you can agree on, especially when emotions are running so high? Well, let's break down the professional process that gives you a clear, objective path forward. And this right here is usually the biggest financial hurdle in a divorce. You know how it goes. One person might be thinking about the great deal they got on it years ago, while the other is looking at the crazy market right now and seeing a huge potential profit. You're both staring at the same four walls, but you're seeing completely different dollar signs. So where do you even begin to find common ground?
The good news is you don't have to stay stuck in that argument. There's a formal, objective process, and it's designed specifically to cut through all the personal feelings and financial hopes. It's all about getting to a real, solid number that's backed by data, a number the law will actually recognize, and that you can both hopefully trust.
And that solution? It's called a formal divorce appraisal. And I mean, forget those online calculators that just throw out a wild guess. This is a serious, professional valuation that becomes the bedrock for a fair and totally legal settlement. Okay, and it's really, really important to get this straight. This is not the same kind of appraisal you got for your mortgage. A divorce appraisal is built for a legal battle. It has to be incredibly thorough, well documented, and totally ready to be picked apart by lawyers and maybe even a judge. That means it carries a whole lot more weight. So the whole point of this process is to figure out the home's fair market value. And you gotta notice that key phrase, designed to withstand legal scrutiny. What that means is the final number isn't just a suggestion, it's a legally defensible figure. It becomes the official starting point for every negotiation that follows. And this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Those free online estimators, sure, they're fun for a quick peek, but they're basically just computer programs making a guess. Look, when your entire financial future is on the line, you need a valuation that's based on a real person inspecting the property and using hard market data, something that will actually hold up in court. Okay, so how does this whole thing actually work? It's really a three-step process. First, a licensed appraiser comes out for a detailed on-site inspection. They're looking at everything, the size, the condition, any upgrades you've done. Next, they do a deep dive into the market data, analyzing what similar homes in your specific neighborhood have actually sold for recently. And finally, they pull all of that together into this comprehensive report that doesn't just give you a number, it shows you exactly how they got to that number. Now here's the thing. If you're in Philadelphia, getting an appraisal isn't just a smart way to stop the arguments. It's actually a fundamental part of how property division works under Pennsylvania law. It's all built on this legal idea called equitable distribution. You're going to hear that term a lot, and you really need to understand what it means because it directly impacts how all your assets, especially your home, are going to be divided. So equitable just means fair, which, by the way, doesn't always mean a perfect 50-50 split. A judge looks at a whole bunch of factors, but the one thing they absolutely must have to make any kind of decision is an objective value for the property. That professional appraisal gives them the neutral, trusted number that the entire legal process is built on. All right, so besides the fact that the law pretty much requires it, when do you find yourself in a situation where getting an appraisal becomes an absolute must? Let's walk through some of the most common real-life scenarios. I mean, this is such a classic situation, right? It's a total standoff. One person might be stuck on the price they paid for it 10 years ago, while the other is seeing houses on the block sell for way more and thinks it's worth a fortune. They're almost $150,000 apart. There's just no way to move forward from a gap that huge without a neutral expert. This is where the appraisal becomes the ultimate tiebreaker. It totally replaces the he said, she said with a single, data-driven, defensible number. In this case, $450,000. And all of a sudden, you're not arguing about opinions anymore. Both parties and their lawyers have a real, credible number to work from, whether they're trying to figure out a buyout or just get the house on the market. So, just to quickly run through it again. You're almost definitely going to need one if one of you wants to buy the other out. You'll need one if you're selling the house and have to agree on a list price. Or, honestly, if you're just at a complete standstill and can't agree. And don't be surprised if your lawyer asks for one right out of the gate. They need that court-ready report to do their job properly. Okay, let's get back to Philadelphia for a second. Because when we're talking about a Philly property, you can't just call up any old appraiser. The way this city's real estate market works, local expertise is everything. It's absolutely critical. And one of the biggest reasons why is because of this really specialized thing that often happens in divorce cases. It's called a retrospective appraisal, and it basically means the appraiser has to act like a time traveler. So what does that even mean? Well, it means the court might not care what your house is worth today. They might need to know what it was worth on the official date of your separation, which could have been months or even years ago. This takes a really skilled appraiser who knows how to dig up and correctly interpret historical sales data for that specific time period.
And look, if you know Philly, you know this is true. A house's value can change dramatically from one block to the next. A real local expert gets those tiny details. The value difference between a row home in one neighborhood and a single family in another. The huge impact of school catchments. And just what's considered normal condition in places from South Philly all the way to the Northeast. That kind of hyperlocal knowledge is what makes the appraisals accurate and impossible to argue with.
All right, so let's zoom out a bit. When you get right down to it, what are the real benefits here? What does spending the money on a professional divorce appraisal actually do for you during what is already a really tough time?
Well, for one, it just cuts through all the noise. It reduces the conflict, which saves you time, money, and a ton of emotional energy. It gives your side of the story legal credibility in court. But maybe the most important thing is this. Think of it like a shield. It protects you from getting a bad deal on your single biggest asset, and it helps stop you from agreeing to an unfair settlement that could really mess up your financial stability for years to come. You know, at the end of the day, dividing up your assets isn't just about closing a chapter. It's about setting both people up to have a secure future. So when your biggest asset is all tangled up in history and emotion, maybe the most important first step you can take is to just find that one solid objective number that you can both use to start building your new lives.